call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Kurt?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Randy? Here. Mark?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Jeff?
He's excused. He was going to try to call in. If he does, we'll pick him up.
Okay. Taylor?
Here. Okay, it's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, today on the agenda, item 3, we have no minutes for approval, and that brings us to amendment and or approval of today's meeting agenda. If there's no amendments, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregory, seconded by Member Lynn. If there's no amendments, all those in favor of proceeding like the agenda's presented to us, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, next item 5 on today's agenda, excuse me, is a public hearing, and it's on ordinance 2019-01. This is an ordinance amending sections 2.20.030, 2.20.060, 2.34.0110B, 2.36.080A, and 3.08.010 of the Borough Code to designate assembly seats. Is there anyone in the audience today that would like to testify under this public hearing? Next. Please state your name and who you represent, please.
Don Koenig, myself.
He's going to, when you take the podium, Don. Okay.
Hello, I'm Richard Burke. I represent myself. I'm here to talk about this ordinance. I think at the very least, I feel it's wrong for the Assembly to try to be making changes at the Assembly level how their seats are elected. I think at the very least, this should be, if it's going to change at all, it needs to be sent to the voters for the voters to make this choice, not the Assembly on how their seats are chose. This disturbs me on quite a bit. I'm concerned under the current system, say 5 people run, you get to pick the 2 you like the best and vote for them. On the proposed change, say 2 people run for 1 seat and I don't like either of them. How am I supposed to vote? And I like the other 3. I know I'm supposed to choose the best 2, but in that case, I can only choose 1 of those 3, even though I may like 2 of them. Yeah, I don't like this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Koenig, you wanted to testify?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Don Koenig. I represent myself. I'm one of the proponents that brought this proposition to the Assembly, and I continue to support it. I feel that, and since you've last addressed this particular issue at your last Assembly meeting, I've been on the street and I've talked to probably around 20, 25 people randomly and asked them for their opinion and their view. And I would have to say clearly the majority. I only found 3 people out of, say, 20 plus people that were not in favor of and just basically said just leave it as it is. So that's just my own personal endeavor to explore this a little bit on the street. If the Assembly chooses to ratify this, which it surely has the ability to do, individuals would have, and any ordinance that you adopt, and I can stand corrected on this, but in my past experience as a member of the council, previous councils, that you have 30 days to overturn any decision by ordinance that the Assembly would make. So you have that as a recourse. You've heard testimony just now that an individual is opposed to it, and I because of somebody running for office, and I don't like either one. Well, so be that. But this particularly proposition puts each of you, if you were a member of the assembly on a designated seat for a given year, that who holds you as an assembly member accountable for your actions or inaction. You know, if you have a point of view that is maybe left or right of what you feel the community is, and I've been in situations where I could think of many examples where this in my own life that I've taken issues to the ballot box by initiative petition. I received a message from Assembly Member Jeff Mucci asking me, you know, my views again. Why am I proposing to do it this way? Well, this is one of the options. I could go through a referendum petition, you know, whether you're engaged or not, and I've been involved in those in the past. But having discussed this with someone who was completely of a different political views almost on all areas, we came to an agreement that this was a good thing. And so I feel personally that you have the opportunity here to address it as an assembly. If you have 4 votes, fine, to adopt it. If not, you can also, as you had discussed in the previous meeting, amend it and respond to the gentleman that just spoke and say, well, put it before the voters. So I encourage you to just take action. I still remain in favor of it as it is presented here. Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Koenig. Is there anyone else in the audience today that would like to testify under this public hearing? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. That moves us to bid awards today. The 19.081 Cabin Creek Pig Launcher Materials. I'll entertain a motion to approve this bid award.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Borough to approve the pig launcher materials for the Cabin Creek water line. Any discussion? I have a couple questions if no one does. Of Mr. Hagerman. So how often do we run the pig through the line now currently, Carl?
Mr. Mayor, currently, because it's such an onerous activity to try and, we have to dig it up, take a large blind flange off a Y and cram the pig in the line manually, which is pretty difficult. We only do it probably about every other year. We monitor the flow through the pipeline, and when we start seeing a decrease, we take the steps to do it. So in this case, if we were able to get the materials and have Public Works install this launcher, we would at least do it once a year and maybe more often, just to make sure that the pipeline's clean.
Okay. So I guess you answered my second question. What's the current process to get the pig, for I guess that's the proper term, into the line? You have to actually dig down to a buried flange.
Yes.
So this new thing would actually do it from the surface?
Yeah, so it would be above ground, easily accessible, and a lot more convenient. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? And just for the people listening in the audience, this has gone out to bid. There was 3 bids. One was non-responsive or wasn't qualified to continue within the bid process, and the bid would be awarded to Core and Maine for the amount not to exceed $40,438.13. So if there's no other questions, I'll clerk call the roll.
Brandy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Kurt.
Yes.
Okay, we have awarded that bid. And is there anybody in the audience, persons to be heard with items related to items on today's agenda? Is there anybody who would like to testify to anything on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to persons to be heard with items unrelated to today's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that has something that's not on the agenda today they'd like to speak to? Seeing none, we'll move to board, commission, and committee reports. That brings us to a SEPA update, and that will be by Member Lynn, who is the voting member on the SEPA board.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Robert Larson here as our alternate, too, so Robert can jump in here with me if I haven't covered it well enough. We had a board meeting last Thursday, all-day meeting. one of the things we did was review all the procedures in place to develop the guide curve and develop our operating policies in our operating plan for last year. We identified as part of that there was a number of things that on policies we probably need to go back and relook at, and some of them fairly complicated. So we essentially then said, well, we'll hold those, we'll take those up at the next meeting, our June meeting, but we did identify some. The second thing we did is the board discussed procedures and policies related to that, and that we tasked staff to go back and to review and look at some other alternatives related to how we might change the way we've done business. The situation we're currently in is probably related to weather. It's, I think, first time ever that it happened in this way. And so we're kind of on, what I'm going to say, on unique ground here. I'll say also that the water levels in both of the reservoirs are at a very low and critical level. All three communities are operating a major part of their electrical loads off generators, trying to minimize draw on the remaining water in the reservoirs. Ketchikan has ordered and bringing on 2 more generators. They're coming in on flatbeds this week. With the idea of hooking them up so they have a little bit of backup. They're running mostly totally off a generator with some backup off of Swan Lake. Wrangell is operating about the same as what we are, and I won't get into specifics. Carl could touch that if we want to, but it's, if any one of our communities go down, we have reserve water in Tyee right now, but it wouldn't let, we're drawing, I think, Carl, what, about 3/10 a day. And we have just enough maybe for about 3 weeks left. But if that, all the rules change, if one of either ours or Wrangell's generators go down, it's going to be a lot less than that. And we adjusted downward. We set a bottom line for the amount of water that can be drawn out of those reservoirs, and we set Tyee 2 feet below the guide curve a couple weeks ago. I tried to get it to move down more than that, but Wrangell wasn't quite there. They wanted to see that we maintain more water in that reservoir and run more generator at that time. But I wanted to have the flexibility that, for instance, over the weekend, if they got in trouble, that they didn't have to call an emergency meeting and go with it, because I have a lot of faith in both Carl and Wrangell's folks trying to operate, let them have some flexibility. We do have another meeting this afternoon, I think, simply to lower that guide curve that we're going after, as I wanted to do last week. In other actions, the board approved reimbursement for both Wrangell and Petersburg to cover most of the actual costs for burning diesel fuel for the time period starting February 15th, and to be reviewed at the special board meeting on March 28th. This is really significant for us, and it means that Petersburg will not have to put a supplemental surcharge for diesel fuel to our ratepayers, and I think that's quite good. However, in the long run, I think that's going to somewhat hasten maybe our wholesale power rates going up slightly down the road quicker than they probably would have otherwise. And last, I want to talk about the board also gave approval to refinance all the outstanding bonds that SEPA now holds, and to the CEO. What that means is it's going to be a significant savings annually in costs for SEPA. We're talking in the neighborhood of probably a couple $100,000 in interest rates, which is pretty significant. And that's about all I have. Robert, would you add? Would you add anything else to what I said?
Thank you, Bob. Robert Larson. And the only thing that I would think is particularly of interest is that SEPA as an organization, as an agency, because there's a lack of water, means, of course, they're not selling any product. So their budget is going to be at least $1.5 million in the red for this year. That, is an issue for them. They don't, it's not that big of an organization that they can absorb that without some significant effects. So that's something that's in the works, and we'll see that again before this is all over with. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Is there any questions of Member Lynn or Robert Larson? I have one question for you, Bob. You made a comment about SEPA's going to cover most of the costs on the diesel burn, and that includes also overtime labor?
Yes.
In this email I saw?
Yes.
So they're just going to cover up to the 6.8 cents which we normally pay? So we're going to still be paying that, which makes sense to me.
We're going to, it'll be minus the 6.8 cents. I'm trying to find here
All right.
the exact wording, but it'll be minus the 6.8 cents, but essentially include everything else, the overtime, our diesel burn, and there was a couple other factors in there that we included, and I can't think of them off the top of my head,
Okay.
but yes, we essentially get most everything back.
Well, that makes me feel a little better, so maybe we don't have to have the discussion on that item I put on the agenda later. And one thing maybe you could clarify for me or get the right answer. I was told at one point when we first started having this water shortage issue, maybe about a month ago, maybe a little longer, from the CEO of SEPA, that we sent $7 million diesel offset of power to Ketchikan, the 32,000 or 30,000 gigawatt hours. But then I heard on the report today it was $3 million worth. What would that, do you have any idea what the accurate number of that is? I'm just trying to get a number in my head that's accurate.
I don't have an accurate number in my mind. It's kind of bounced around from, based on the amount of power that's been fed back north. So it's reduced, but I can't tell you offhand what it is. I can find out, but I don't remember offhand.
Maybe a question you could answer.
Yeah,
So.
good point.
Okay. All right. If there's no other questions of Member Lynn, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda under Board, Commission, and Committee reports. It's item B, and it's a Share Coalition presentation. So if you gals are ready, please introduce yourselves, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Becky Cherland. I am here on behalf of the Share Coalition. I work at Mental Health. I am an office clerk, a rehab associate, and also a grant coordinator. And this, actually, on top of that, I just want to say I actually come here more than just for mental health. I am also the president of Little League. I am involved with lots of different activities. I'm an EMT here locally and also involved with the Elks and Emblem Club. You guys probably see me in the dining room. So what we're coming here to present is actually more than just from mental health. It's on the Share Coalition. Ashley's here with me also.
My name is Ashley Kawashima. I am a social worker at Mental Health. I am also the business manager of the local dance studio, and I volunteer at different things around the community, like Monday night dinners at the Narrows, and I'm the secretary of the Share Coalition. I'm also a substance abuse counselor.
So we are here to present the Share Coalition. The Share means support, health, awareness, resiliency, and education. Share was formed in 2006 by Petersburg Mental Health Services with the purpose of promoting healthy community using evidence-based practices to meet grant requirements. In the decade plus, Share has sponsored and partnered with many different projects and activities over the years in preventing harmful behaviors and promoting health and wellness in our community.
So Share currently has quite a few public and private organizations that we partner with. Primarily, Share was funded from Mental Health, but now they were our fiscal agent, and now we're also getting some grant funding from WAVE. The medical center plays a big role in helping Share because they provide us with statistics on opioid prescriptions and people that are coming into the hospital, like utilizing emergency services and things like that for substance abuse. We also partner with the Borough, PIA, the school district, public health, OCS, the trial courts, KFSK. We have a lot of concerned citizens and small business owners currently, but we are also just trying to increase that awareness because we have been around since 2006, but a lot of people have never heard of SHARE, or they are just recently starting to kind of hear about what the coalition is doing in the community. Some past efforts, things that we worked on, was a campaign to reduce alcohol being supplied to minors, and in conjunction with that, the Lock Up Your Liquor campaign, in order to help reduce underage drinking. We did the 10,000 Step Challenge. We worked to train community members about issues of substance abuse and harmful legal products. There were some events that were sponsored by SHARE that were held at Mountain View Manor. I think that was like a few years ago, before I became a part of SHARE. The Green Dot program, we worked to advocate for gun locks and training the community members in suicide intervention, prevention, and postvention.
So Ashley and I have actually joined the coalition, I'd say, in the last 2 years, and our main efforts that we've been focused on right now is the opioid prevention. Again, mental health was the fiscal agent for this. The main goal here is reduction of illegal and illicit opioid use locally. We did a community readiness assessment and found out that our community is actually very low for readiness to deal with this problem. So the major things, I don't know if you guys are familiar with grants and how the state works, they put really strict stipulations on what needs to go on and what happens. So what we did is we tracked, with the thanks to Sandy here, EMS calls for overdoses, also just to throw in there alcohol-related calls also. Then also pulling numbers from the PD, we've done opioid-related arrests and also calls that were related to it. These are our tracking numbers, things that we're looking at to see if it's decreased. However, the two main goals was to increase community readiness through the media campaign. So a lot of people have probably seen through the last few years opioid posters, things that have been posted on Facebook in the community. We have stuff at the theater that shows before the movies are playing, just on some statistics and things that you can do. We've also been tracking on Facebook all the likes, the shares, the reach, how many people it's reached in different meetings and trainings and presentations that we've gone to. And our biggest one that we've done also that is still in the works is our local recovery stories. This is going to be a community forum that we're going to present a presentation with locals here and what helped and what did not help for recovery, and to show that it is actually possible here in Petersburg. The other major goal was to reduce the opioid prescription medication in circulation. Through the hospital, they have been tracking for us and giving us statistics that we've been reporting to the state on the monthly local prescriptions that's prescribed to people here and how many people is being prescribed to. Also, during this grant cycle, we were able to secure a drug take-back facility, or a bin that we could utilize. It is in the police department. Since then, I just want to throw out there that we have taken in, up to last month, 8,369 opioid pills. So that is a lot we've taken off the street, and this doesn't even count any medication, over-the-counter stuff that's been turned in. We've had a lot of animal products that have been turned in also. I count those numbers with Barb and I down at the police department, and we have a table that's usually keeping full every quarter of medication. So that's been a very, very good thing to have in our town, and to see all this medication come off the streets. We also keep track of what the police has actually seized off of calls, and then also the public health nurse has purple little bags out there that anybody can get, and we're keeping some numbers there of statistics of what we know that have been disposed of. Ashley's already said that our grants have been funded mainly through mental health, or the coalition has been funded mainly through mental health these past years. And this last one was through the substance abuse prevention grant from the state of Alaska. Other current efforts that we have going on right now, WAVE has newly joined into actually being a fiscal agent, and they are running some programs through there in the very beginning stages. There is a domestic violence and sexual assault grant that they're currently working on. We've started working on the very beginning stages of the strategic planning, excuse me there. So there's lots of back work that people don't notice, and that's in the works of getting it going. Also, a couple of us went up and did the green dot training, so train the trainers, and we are going to bring it back hopefully here to Petersburg and spread the information on that. And then also, WAVE has what's called DART, it's Disability Abuse Response Team. This is also new to our community. It's pulling in a lot of different agencies like REACH, I believe possibly the hospital, the Manor's involved, we at Mental Health are also involved, and these are meetings and trainings that have started.
So for looking at the future for SHARE, we recently started a new Facebook page, and Grace Wolf graciously donated her time and creative abilities to make a logo, which was on the first slide, for us. We're also in the process today of mailing out a bulk mailer to the whole community. So there's 1,704 brochures that will be going out to everybody who has a post office box. Kind of explaining what SHARE is, where we're trying to head, why community wellness is important, kind of trying to tie in all demographics, all ages, that everybody is a part of community wellness, and we're trying to speak to more groups and organizations just to kind of get the coalition out there, and we've been to like Rotary, and we're here today, and we had some high schoolers that came and actually spoke to our group at our meeting this last month about the mental health first aid, which is a future project that we're looking at. So they went and they did mental health first aid training. Where were they at? Juneau. In Juneau. And our goal is to have a couple coalition members be able to go out and do the trainer for the mental health first aid and be able to come back to the community and offer free training for any community members or organizations or businesses or churches, community members, so that they are able to kind of recognize maybe when someone is having maybe some issues with mental health, or when there's a way that someone could positively like intervene in someone's life to help direct them somewhere in the community where they could get the resources that they need. We're also talking about bringing speakers to town. Primarily, our focus was on bringing speakers about the opioid crisis, but now we're moving towards bringing speakers to train different organizations in the community on how to start those tough conversations. Because sometimes that initial conversation or knowing kind of how to get the conversation moving in a positive direction can be like one of the hardest parts. So just branching, kind of just trying to branch out and kind of tackle all of the community wellness and what that looks like, not just for substance abuse, and working on elderly activities, and then really focusing on breaking like the mental health stigma and like in recovery and things like that, and what that looks like in the community.
We could go on for quite a while, but I know that the meetings here run forever, so we're not going to hold you here for long. But I do want to let you guys know that the SHARE Coalition, we're always open for new prevention ideas and new people to join. It is now we are trying to branch off and actually get the community more involved than just having it come straight from mental health these days. So we're trying to actually approach it as the whole community coming together. So we would love to have any of you guys come and join, especially an assembly member is one thing that we have noted on a few different member meetings that we would like to have somebody get involved with. Our meetings are on the last Thursday of every month. It's from 12 to 1 in the Dorothy Engel Conference Room at the Medical Center. Otherwise, we do make, once in a while, we do have to change the location. And I'm just going to say lunch is usually provided, so it can be a work lunch. And our contact information, as Ashley said, we have a Facebook page. You can call either one of us at Mental Health, or our email addresses are up there. Is there any questions from you guys?
Is there any questions from the Assembly? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, that brings us to the Mayor's report today. It's fairly short. I've called for a town hall meeting, and it's in regards to Governor Dunleavy's proposed fiscal year 2020 budget. And the meeting is going to be to hear public comments and concerns on the potential impact of the proposed budget on Petersburg as well as individuals in the community. The meeting will be held this Wednesday, March 6th at 6 p.m. in these chambers, the Assembly chambers. The Borough will accept testimony both orally and in writing, focused on opposition or support of the proposed budget. Public questions and concerns provided to the Borough during the town hall meeting will be researched and findings will be shared with the public. And there is a report attached as a report, and this form can be filled out by Borough residents and turned into the Assembly at the town hall meeting. And I'd encourage people to attend and give their opinions on the personal effects that this proposed budget will have. What I'd like to do is we'll have a sign-up sheet at the door, and we'll use that sign-up sheet for a list of people who want to testify, and there'll also be a sign-up sheet for people that are attending. So will be important to get people's opinion. And we're not going to answer questions. I mean, they don't really have any answers right now. It's still a moving target, but just with what's been proposed, the effect that it will have on people. And these have been going on around the state. So that is it for the mayor's report. Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before we move on to the manager's report, I know we have our audit report and the medical center update to come back to as well.
Oh, that's right. I missed a couple things, didn't I?
It's all good. I'm just reminding you.
That's all right. We'll go back to that before the manager's report. Must be hungry for lunch or something. Okay, sorry about that. So, Sam, are you still on there from BDO? We'll go through your audit report.
Yes, I am.
Okay, and Jody, do you need to chime in at all? Or?
Nope.
Okay, Sam, we've got the documents in front of us, so wherever you want to start.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, members of the Assembly, for the opportunity both to speak today and for the opportunity to continue to be of service to the Borough. We greatly value this relationship. Personally, I've worked on this audit almost every year of my career, which is 9 years now. We look forward to many more years of partnership with the Borough. So there's two documents I believe you have. The first is referred to as the audit wrap-up document. It's about 20 pages and has a colorful front. If everyone has that, I'd like to start with going over that document. So this audit wrap-up, these are the required items in our standards say we need to discuss with those charged with governance, which is the Assembly. And if you want to turn to page 3 of the document, that's where the information starts. So this kind of provides us a high-level summary. So we completed our audit and we issued our opinion over the June 30, 2018 financial statements on February 8, 2019. We issued what we refer to as an unmodified opinion. So an unmodified opinion is a clean opinion and it's the highest level of professional assurance that we can render. So that's the best possible outcome that you can get. When we do our audit, we talk in terms of materiality and provide only reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. Absolute assurance would be making sure every dollar, down to the dollar, was absolutely accurate. It's almost impossible to do that, so we do provide reasonable assurance, and with that, we audit to materiality, so there's certain balances and certain disclosures that we determine are immaterial, both quantitatively and qualitatively, to users of the financial statements. In preparing and completing our audit over the financial statements, it would not have been possible without the cooperation from management. Working with Jody and the rest of her team was a great experience, as it always is. So we extend our thanks to Jody and everyone in finance for their assistance throughout the process and being very well prepared and able to answer all our questions in a very timely manner. Going on to page 4, the results of our audit. As I mentioned earlier, we issued an unmodified opinion. These are some of the high-level points. So the biggest change in terms of the numbers in the financial statements this year was the Borough was required to adopt a new accounting standard, which is a GASB standard 75, and this required the Borough to record for the first time ever the Borough's portion of the unfunded PERS liability related to OPEB, the other post-employment benefits. So this is predominantly the health care benefits due to currently inactive members of PERS. So that these members come from the state, and they're divided proportionately among all participating employers. So the Borough got an overall a really small slice of the whole pie, but significant in terms of the Borough's perspective. So that went into effect this year, and that changed some of the opening balances as well as the ending balances as well. We concur that the Borough adopted CASB 75 correctly, and that the disclosures relating to the new statement are accurate. Skipping down towards the bottom of page 4, we are required to report if we come across any misstatements to the financial records that were presented to us. So there were 4 items that were above our clearly trivial threshold that we identified to Jody, and Jody agreed to make a change. None of these amounts were material. I don't think any of them are that significant. They're just items that we have to disclose there. So overall, 4 correcting statements is really not that big a deal, and it's very good really for an organization the size of the Borough and the amount of different funds and activities you do have throughout the year. There was one uncorrected misstatement, and the reason why it wasn't corrected is because it related to an opening balance that would have gone back and caused prior year balances to change. So almost always in situations like that, we urge management not to post the correction if it's not material, and it was not in this case. But we are required to disclose that there was one misstatement that was not corrected. Going on to page 6, just to point out that the Borough is considered the primary government, and there are 2 components of the Borough, and that would be the school district and the medical center. Our firm also audited both the school district and the medical center, and so you will see those numbers in the Borough's financial statements, and there are certain disclosures that we have to make in the relationship between all 3 of those organizations. So going on to page 7, we do not issue an opinion over internal controls. So internal controls, to back up, those are the policies, the processes, and procedures put into place that help ensure that the numbers reported in the financial statements are accurate. So those are the different controls that the Borough has. And like I mentioned, we do not issue an opinion over these controls. We do evaluate them, however, because they are directly related to the ending numbers in the financial statements. And if we come across any significant deficiencies and material weaknesses related to these controls, we would be required to report those, and I'm happy to report that we did not come across any material weaknesses that would require disclosure. So overall, the controls that are in place over the financial statements are designed appropriately and implemented appropriately and are functioning as they were intended to. The school district, however, did have a material weakness related to their internal controls, and this stems from the books and records of the school district not being reconciled and closed in a timely manner, and so that caused issues with their audit. This information has been expressed and communicated to both the school board and also management of the school district, and we have adopted a corrective action plan to hopefully remediate this issue going forward. So to kind of sum up the rest of the audit wrap-up document, page 8, we just have some more required disclosures, and this is just saying that there's no disagreements that we had with management that we could not resolve. We did not come across any significant deficiencies, and we were not required or were not forced to change our audit plan due to either a lack of evidence or not getting assistance from management as we requested. And that sums up the audit wrap-up document. There's a few other pages that talk to us about accounting standards going into effect in future years. I don't believe any of these will have a significant impact on the Borough. However, in 2021, the Borough will have to adopt a new leasing standard, and this is on page 12 of the audit wrap-up document. And all this will require is that operating leases that the Borough has historically just expensed during the year, those will now have to go on the balance sheet. So the Borough will show both an asset for whatever they're leasing, and then also a liability related to future lease payments, which is a change going forward. And we'll be in touch with Jody, we brought it up before, and there could be a little bit of a learning curve on this one, and just a certain amount of time and effort will be needed to kind kind of consolidate all the different leases the borough may have, and it could be at the end of the day that there's more leases that meet the criteria that have to be disclosed under the new standard, but it's something we'll have a couple of years to look forward to and do some legwork ahead of time on. And the final, I guess, 8-9 pages of the audit wrap-up document are just the representation letter that management provides to us, disclosing who's responsible for what with the audit, and then also the last 2 pages are the actual corrected misstatements and uncorrected misstatement that I mentioned earlier. So if there's any questions over the audit wrap-up document, I'd be happy to answer those at this time. If not, I'll move forward and discuss some of the high points of the financial statements.
Is there any questions from the Assembly of Sam? It looks like we're ready to move forward, Sam.
Mayor?
Well, Jody raised her hand, Sam.
So I just wanted to clarify, if everyone could look at the financial statements and make sure it says 2018 on the front, because they came in a big box, and some of them it looks like said back here in 2016 and 2015, so they must have sent me a year of each of the old ones. So does everyone say 2018? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Sam, if you're ready.
Okay. As you can see, the financial statements are very large. There's about 160 pages here, so I don't want to go over all the numbers because we'd be here till all night. So I'll just go over some of the high points. If there's questions or certain items you would like to discuss, feel free to interject. So starting on the first pages 1 through 3, this is our actual opinion. And I mentioned earlier we issued an unmodified opinion. And it's important to point out that the financial statements are the responsibility of management. You know, we are contracted to assist in preparing the financial statements, but ultimately at the end of the day, management is required to take ownership of the financial statements, and the only thing required of us is that we issue an opinion over those statements. So that's all outlined here in the opinion. And as I mentioned, we issued the unmodified opinion. That's really the opinion. And then going to page 20, this is started with the basic financial statements. I'll go over some of the more important numbers that you should be focusing on. So starting on page 20, you'll see under total assets, under the total column, the borough had $156,333,000 in total assets. And this exceeded liabilities by approximately almost $130 million. It's important to point out, of the $156 million in assets, you have about $124 million tied up in either land, construction in progress, or various capital assets such as buildings, equipment, vehicles, infrastructure. Actual liquid capital assets were just over $30 million in terms of cash, and another approximately $1.5 million in net receivables. We go to page 21. This shows the borough's liabilities for the year. So at year-end, the borough had almost $26.5 million in liabilities. Of this amount, $23 million are considered non-current or due in more than 1 year. Of this amount, to drill down even deeper, we have close to $10 million between the net pension liability of $8.36 million and the other post-employment benefit liability of $1.3 million. So I'd like to point out that these amounts, the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability, do not reflect actual cash payments that are going to be due of the borough at a future date, like your bonds or your loan payable actually represent. These numbers will go down every year depending on different actuarial assumptions and investment returns recognized by the PERS plan. And as far as cash payments that the borough has to plan for related to these two liabilities, the borough will continue to just contribute 22% of the covered payroll costs related to PERS into the future unless the state were to change that requirement. We go to the government-wide statement. So if you go to page 23, you'll see at the government-wide level, the borough actually recorded a loss or a decrease in that position of $918,000. So it's important to know on the statement of activities, pages 22 and 23, the expenses amount, this includes both depreciation and changes in pension-related items. So these are non-cash items. So it's important to point that out. A lot of those, the decrease in net position was mostly due to non-cash items. So going on to page 24, you'll see the balance sheet, and this is broken out between the general fund, which is the borough's main operating fund, and other non-major funds. So the only number I want to talk about on page 24 is the unassigned fund balance for the general fund. So this was $3,618,000 as of June 30th, 2018. And to put this number into context, this amount represents the available fund balance, so assets less liabilities that the borough has, that there's no external or internal restrictions on. So this is money that both the assembly and management can use as they best deem fit, obviously in accordance with different laws and municipal code, of course. So that $3.6 million, to put that in further context, if you go to page 26, you'll see that the general fund had expenditures of $8,728,000 in 18. So in a doomsday situation in which the borough receives no funding, no revenue in its general fund, but expenditures stayed the same as they did in 2018 in the general fund, the borough would have just about 5 months of unassigned fund balance that they could use to cover those expenditures. So again, it's not really likely that you won't receive anything in terms of revenue. But if that were to happen, just know you have that built-in savings in the general fund after the year end of $3.6 million. Also on page 26, you'll see the general fund, the revenues exceeded expenditures by almost $1.1 million. Because of this allowed the general fund to transfer out only $1.8 million and use the transfer of those funds went to other funds to fund both capital costs related to the police general administration building. Also, it funded operating subsidies with the assisted living fund, and also funded debt service costs related to principal and interest payments on the bonds. If we even factor in the debt service cost, which is around $500,000 that the general fund paid for, the borough still has just about 4.5 months worth of reserves tied up in that unassigned fund balance in the general fund. So the last page I will discuss on related to the financial statements is on page 31. And this is the operating statement for the borough's proprietary funds, your enterprise funds, and your internal service fund. So I draw attention to the kind of middle line there, the income or loss from operations. So you see all the major funds, electric, water, wastewater, hardware, and assisted living, all those funds had operating losses for the year. But it's important to point out that if you add back depreciation, which is again a non-cash item, those funds are all except the hardware fund and the assisted living fund would have shown gains from operations for the years. Now, depreciation is a non-cash item, but it does represent an estimate of the wear and tear and deterioration of your capital assets. So while it's non-cash, you can think that those are costs that will ultimately have to be made up for in terms of deferred maintenance costs or replacement costs of those assets. So overall, there was an operating loss related to your proprietary funds of about $2.7 million. This was offset slightly by a distribution received from CEPA, which is non-operating, a federal interest subsidy, and also some collision relief paid for by the state. But overall, the enterprise funds had a loss for the year of $2 million before a large transfer in of about $1 million. So those are, I guess, what I would summarize as the most important numbers from the financial statements. But there's, again, a wealth of information on the following pages and go in depth and provide more information on the basic financial statements. But with that, I've spoken for about, I think, 15 minutes. Is there any questions or any numbers you'd like more information on?
Are there any questions from any assembly members of representative from BDO? This member Bob Lynn has a question for you, Sam.
Sam, you talked earlier about this year we had to enter PERS and make some changes in our accounting standards. What effect did that have on our overall position?
No, Okay, that's a great question. So overall, it added a liability of about $1.3 million. And this liability can be found on page 21. It's the net other post-employment benefit liability, and it was $1,346,167. So that's the overall borough-wide number. Now, the borough allocates that between governmental activities and business type. And $735,000 went into governmental activities, and so that amount is not shown in the governmental funds. But about $611,000 that liability did make its way into the various enterprise funds. So all that related to is adding a larger liability to those funds. And because this was a year of implementation, they did have to adjust opening equity for the proprietary funds and the government-wide fund. So there was a decrease related to that to get the opening balances on the book. So going forward, and this year included, there will be certain OPEB-related expenses that will run through the proprietary funds. Those amounts shouldn't be very large relative to other items that they have actual operating costs and depreciation. But it could potentially be a decrease there. Some years, just the way the numbers shake out, it could actually add to the bottom line. And again, these are amounts that are totally out of control, or out of the control of anyone related to operations that come straight from the state of Alaska.
Okay, does that answer your question, Bob?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions of Sam? Okay, thank you, Sam, for your presentation.
All right, well, thank you. And if any other questions come up, I know also with the release of the governor's proposed budget, there could be questions about how it might affect the financial statements going forward. At any time, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I'd be happy to discuss that as well.
Okay, thank you. There might be some questions generated coming up in the future with our proposed budget in the state. So, anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, back at item 11B, we have an update from Petersburg Medical Center CEO Phil Hofstetter. So, thank you, Phil, for coming today.
Sorry, Phil. Slight break.
Oh, that's all right. How's that? Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly. Phil Hofstetter with Petersburg Medical Center. Well, I'm just back from Juneau. Last week I spent the bulk of the week attending the legislative fly-in with the Alaska State Hospital Nursing Home Association. So I'll provide a little bit of a grim update, if you bear with me. So we were able to meet with the commissioner, deputy commissioner, department heads at Department of Health and Human Services. Essentially, there's no level of detail on the cuts, on what that means operationally. I did manage to meet with the chief of staff individually for Senator Stedman's office. And he basically asked me to look what PMC, or Petersburg Medical Center, would look like if we had a full 38% cut, Medicaid cut for our facility. So our facility has essentially 40% of our revenue comes from Medicaid. So 38% off the top would equate to about $2 million in cuts for our operating, which would be very significant. So that's basically, for every 1% cut, that's $50,000. For our facility that operates roughly on a 1 to 2% profit margin, I can't, if you do a little bit of math, it's fairly catastrophic for our facility. So hopefully there are a little bit better detail, but that's basically the takeaway from the meeting. I'll keep you informed as those details come up. I'm going to meet with our leadership team this week, and I have a financial team as well to review some what-if scenarios. But basically, we're trying to stay ahead of it. Their team, the commissioner and the deputy commissioner, had one of the things they were putting out there, some innovative ideas. I stood next to every one of them and basically said, I'll be partners with you in any innovative idea you have. The deputy commissioner and the commissioner are heading to CMS to speak with them. That's the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. and they're going to look at maybe some options that they have already in place nationally that could help reduce some of those cuts. So anyway, I'll keep you informed on that as they develop. Hopefully we won't be seeing those as depicted. And normally I'm a glass half full guy, so I'm sorry to bring a little doom and gloom today.
Well, I think we're all trying to foresee how this is going to come out, and it's going to be a moving target into the legislative session. So hopefully there's some positive outcome to it.
Yeah, I hope
what
so.
it'll be, but any questions of Mr. Hofstadter?
I was wondering, with the budget being up in the air as it is with these cuts, are we maybe slowing down on the hospital expansion or new facility thing at all?
You know, any way you look at it, something's got to happen with the aging facility. So what's interesting, when I read the governor's take on the operating cost, one of the reasons for the cuts was the lack of infrastructure on the capital side. Considering that a capital project such as a medical center needs to occur, and that it's typically a 5-year or longer project, this is the time absolutely not to maybe look at those. It is the time to look at those, I guess is what I mean. We do have a grant from the Denali Commission to help look at master planning and what that would look like. One of the conversations I had with the legislator at the table was, we have an aging facility. We're a result of, even though Petersburg has it on their CAPSIS as a priority, we haven't been able to obtain any state funding for that. But what would a innovative or a new facility look like in a small critical access hospital? We're certainly at risk as an organization, but maybe use the opportunity to look at a facility, an innovatively new facility. If new Medicaid cuts are coming, what does that new health care look like, and how can we actually have a facility that mimics or mirrors that optimally? So to me, that's my glass half full coming back at you, where maybe we could use that opportunity to design a facility, not in a huge extravagant facility, but a smart design that takes care of patients in the small community of Petersburg. The history of the medical center goes back many, many, many generations. It's pretty interesting when you look at it. So what is it going to look like in 5 years from now? And hopefully with the Denali Commission funding, we could actually take a look at what they may look like.
Thank you. Any other questions of the CEO? Okay, thank you for coming in today. Okay, now we're on to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Friends of Parks and Rec group is amazing, quoting Chandra. Their current projects include looking at sprucing up the Eagles Roost stairs, upgrading the locker room showers to automatic shutoff buttons to avoid the water loss, and developing a potential route for a frisbee golf course. They have donated a weekend so far to help move gym equipment and work on the locker room's maintenance needs as well. Thanks to PIA, they're doing a wonderful job plowing some of our trails. I think we've heard a citizen or two might also be out there helping. We do appreciate it. Parks and Rec is having some conversations with KFSK to do a once-a-month radio spot to discuss Parks and Rec programming. We were hoping to be able to start that this spring and work with KFSK on that. Property assessments were mailed out on March 1st, so please look for your assessment in the mail and review. Property owners have until April 1st to appeal. This is a hard deadline, and there have been many assessment updates this year, so please check carefully. Appeal forms are at the Borough Finance Office or on the Borough's website. Harbor maintenance staff installed 6 more safety ladders for the ends of the float system in the north, middle, and on D-float. We have 4 more on order for the South Harbor. Cold weather played a part in 3 vessels almost sinking in the harbor, thanks to regular harbor patrols and some good Samaritans noticing things out of the ordinary and calling their concerns in. But keep an eye on your boats. Water Department staff, this staff is working through findings of the sanitary survey at the water treatment plant and the distribution system. A conversation with the ADEC recently has given a firm direction to satisfy the state in regards to some of the issues raised. Of highest importance to the state is to perform additional work on a large diameter separation valve at the water storage tank, and also to install adequate backflow prevention at the end of our system where the department regularly runs water for water quality purposes. Solutions for both of these issues are in the works. McMillan Jacobs, which was the consultant that we contracted with for Power and Light, has provided initial drafts on the alternative development and analysis report and a capital improvement plan. Once the staff finishes reviews and offers some comments and feedback, the reports will be finalized and we will present the findings to the Assembly. Kind of a real high-level high point, $5.3 million for changes at the powerhouse and $2 million for new pen stock. So some big dollars, and we'll have more information as Carl and his staff have a chance to go through it. It's kind of all about power conservation. You heard a little bit of that earlier. PSAs have been produced with various tips on how to reduce your energy consumption, and many customers are doing a great job in turning off lights, lowering thermostats, and cutting back on hot water use. Thanks to the Borough departments that have taken measures to lead by example and reduce energy use at their facilities. Our primary sand truck experienced a weld failure in the sander attachment. It was out of service for a few days while repairs were made. The smaller sand truck was utilized to cover all sanding routes until the larger truck was placed back in service. March 6th, 7th, and 8th, the Petersburg Police Department, U.S. Coast Guard, and the Harbor Department will be conducting some active shooter drills. Coast Guard is sending law enforcement and boarding teams from Southeast Alaska to attend the training in Petersburg. The 6th and 7th will be teaching the Coast Guard the response to active shooters and the tactics involved in stopping an active threat. March 8th, starting at approximately 0700, the final drill will start. This will start in the harbor and move as it develops, so don't be alarmed if you see helicopters and other stuff. Coast Guard Station Sitka Air Station is sending a helicopter over, and the small boats and Petersburg Harbor security boat will be actively involved in hunting the bad guys, which I believe are our harbor staff, if I'm not mistaken.
It's Carl.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Petersburg Police Department and jail received an audit by the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Corrections and received in-compliance ratings. The Deputy Commissioner was impressed with the jail facility and the degree of safety that it demonstrated. Staffing levels at the facility was an area noted for improvement, but still within compliance, and the official results will be released in April. And I've got a note to ask Jim about Engel Entertainment.
Yes. Engel Entertainment arrived last week, picked them up at the airport, and so they got to meet everyone Thursday, Friday. They started doing some filming, and so now they're here for approximately 8 weeks. So you guys might see them out and about in town, and so that's... Tonight we're having a get-together at the police department for the employees so that the employees and families can get to meet Engel Entertainment. So that's where we're at with them currently.
Thank you. Planning Commission meets on March 12th to review comments and make a recommendation on the proposed zoning map for Service Area 1. All property owners were mailed a notice regarding the proposed map and how to submit comments. Additional information is available from the Borough homepage. Click on the Petersburg Development Code Revision. Building plan review permits and inspections are available. We do appreciate everyone's patience while our building official was out of town in Costa Rica. So that was not fair at all. Seaweed Mariculture Workshop scheduled March 5th from 9:30 to 12 p.m. in the Assembly Chambers. Gary Freitag with the Alaska Seed Grant Marine Advisory Program will speak on the practical aspects of seaweed mariculture. PEDC Visitor Industry Working Group is meeting over the next several months, time from 2 to 3. March 4th today, the location is in the downstairs training room in the municipal building. And then on the 25th, March 25th, April 15th, and April 29th, again from 2 to 3, those meetings will be held here in the Assembly chambers. Sheila, Jody, and I have had telephone conversations with 3 different consultants regarding the assisted living facility. We will be receiving proposals over the next weeks and are hoping to talk to at least 1 more, maybe 2 more, and then make a recommendation to the Assembly at a future meeting. Kind of one consistent takeaway, in some telephone conversations, they're pretty consistent. The facility is just too small. You can't, in that industry, evidently, to make it break even or better, their minimum size that they've put out there is anywhere from 40 to 50 units, and we have 20. So it was not a surprise to any of the consultants when we said we were having a really difficult time breaking even. That was the first question, how many units do you have? When we answered that, they said, oh, well, that explains it. Most of them they're building these days are 60-plus units or better. So anyway, we'll still work through that, and then hopefully we'll have better information going forward. That's it, unless there's questions.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any questions for the manager? Move over.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Steve, I see Liz isn't here, but could you answer whether or not that the Visitors Industry Working Group has a full board yet, or are they? How's that shaping up?
I can speak as a PEDC board member. So we had our meeting last Thursday, and there were 2, maybe 3 seats still open. They were looking for someone from the hotel industry and someone from the commercial fishing industry. They're somewhat already represented. I mean, Ron Bushman, for example, is on the list, but we wanted another commercial fisherman on there. They were going to kind of keep putting that out there and hope that somebody else would join. And also they were trying to get somebody from the hotel industry. I'm not sure, there might have been a 3rd position open as well.
Just to follow up, Steve?
Yes, sir.
How does one apply? How would one go about applying?
I would send an email to Liz Cabrera. PEDC is kind of taking the lead on this, and Liz is organizing the whole thing. So I'd send her an email or come in and see her, whatever works best.
Okay, any other questions of the manager on his report? Okay, that moves us to unfinished business, yes.
So if we take 5?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you. We're going to plow ahead for another hour. We low on water.
It might be longer than we think.
Probably not, but thank you.
Okay. 1:12, and we're on item 14 on the agenda, unfinished business. The first item under unfinished business is ordinance for second reading. That's ordinance 2019-01. This is an ordinance amending numerous sections which I listed off earlier of the Borough Code to designate assembly seats. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance at its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Lynn to adopt this ordinance. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank the 2 members of the community, Mr. Burke and Mr. Koenig, who came and testified today at the public hearing, and to the numerous people who took the time to talk to Mr. Koenig about this ordinance, and to the people who spoke with me on the street since the last meeting about this. So I've made my position pretty clear, and I really think it's a better way for us to go about doing our voting. That said, I think I'm going to paraphrase Mr. Koenig from last week, talking about if we really can't come to a good consensus, I think it'd be better putting it on the ballot. And Mr. Burke today had commented about putting it on the ballot. And for those who were paying attention to this voting, it's been kind of a 4-3 close vote each time, and not a clear consensus. So what I would do was I'd like to move to amend this ordinance to include language to place this on the October ballot to be a decision made by the voters at the municipal election.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been an amendment been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Merle, to have this ordinance put on our October 2019 ballot during the election to make this a voter decision. So, any discussion on the amendment? Member Stanton Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just want to get the amendment out there. It seems like a fair compromise for that, because one of the key pieces I've heard from people in the community is it's kind of been a mixed bag, and anytime I'm getting a mixed bag on a topic, it means the community has some pretty different opinions on it, which means a great opportunity for that to go to the ballot so that they can, the citizens of Petersburg can decide how they want it to go. So that seems like a better way to go about this right now, in my humble opinion. Thanks.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment to place this on the ballot other than the Assembly taking a position? Other than putting it on the ballot. All right, we'll be voting on the amendment. Please call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, if the amendment passes unanimously, that brings us back to the motion as amended, or the ordinance as amended. Any discussion on the amended motion? This is to put it on the ballot. Member Norham?
I would just like to, I've been voting yes because I wanted to get to this public hearing part of it, and then put it on the ballot. Awesome. But I would like to caution that this does kind of set us up for like partisan politics on a local level when it does get voted on in October. And I think everybody needs to really think about that when they go to vote on it. I know Mr. Koenig thinks it's a good idea, and maybe it is, but I don't. I think it's a bad idea. And I just think people need to think about that before they vote yes on it in October.
Okay, and I guess as an assembly today, if we don't want to vote to put it on the ballot, that's, see how the vote comes out, that's up to us. I'm not in favor of seeing this move forward. If it was going to be voted on, I mean, if it was going to be a decision, I would rather have it be made by the people, but I'm not going to be voting in favor of this ordinance even as amended, just for that reason. Member Morrell?
Yeah, I have to agree with Taylor. I think that it's going to bring in more partisan, it's going to keep us away from being bipartisan, and it's also going to make it so that there's a lot more political strategy if you have to pick a seat. And I think it'll also deter people from wanting to run and throw their name in the hat if they have to choose a person to run against. A lot of people are okay with that, but, a lot of times we're sitting here with our friends or neighbors, and people don't want to do that. So I'm against it, but I would rather have the people vote on it.
Any other discussion on the ordinance as amended to put it on the ballot in October? Seeing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Nope.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, it passes with the second reading, this ordinance does, with a 4-2 vote, and the third reading will be on March 18th. So that brings us to new business, and the first item under new business is Resolution 2019-03. This is a resolution setting ambulance use fees that are aligned with the annual Medicare-approved reimbursement schedule per ambulance response, and to establish a $100 fee per treat no transport response for use of Petersburg Borough's emergency medical services. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution as presented. So move.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Walhooter, seconded by Member Lem to adopt Resolution 2019-03. Discussion?
Mayor.
Kurt, Member Walhooter.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just think it's time that we kind of do come into line with services just cost money here, and as funding becomes less and less in this community, we certainly can't cut off, the emergency medical services that we do need in this community. So I'm in favor of this. I wish we didn't have to, but I'm in favor of the increase here just so that we can maintain the services that we do now have. So I'll be voting for this.
Okay, Member Morrell.
I just have a couple questions. What happens when somebody doesn't have insurance or any ways to pay for it? How do you guys go about collecting money from those people?
Sandy, can you answer that?
Yep, sorry. I'm having a shoe problem. Sandy Dixon, Fire EMS Director. So the borough currently has a we bill insurance companies or we bill the private citizen. And I believe, and Jody can correct me if I misspeak,
So we send out the billing. If an individual cannot afford the service that we provide, I believe that the borough will offer a payment program. And then if they don't contact the borough and discuss with the finance department, then the potential to send to collections is there. And that's at the discretion of the finance director and myself, mostly the finance director.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we don't bill out of the finance office. We have a third party that does it, so we don't have to deal with the HIPAA requirements in our office. We'll take payment, but we don't really know what it's for. We let Omni know, the billing company, and they apply it. They send us reports every month saying who owes what, how many times they've billed them. If they billed them 3 times, they'll send a list to Sandy saying these people haven't paid, and then we'll make a decision. You know, if it depends on if we've talked to the people, because we will definitely make a payment plan in any case.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff? Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 2019-03 passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2019-04, and this is a resolution to vacate and convey the Decorah Street right-of-way between Wrangell Avenue and Valkyrie Street. Entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second? Sorry.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor and seconded by Member Lynn. Member Morrell, you want to recuse yourself?
Yes,
from
can
this?
I
Because
recuse
you're-
myself?
And Member Morrell asked to be recused from this vote because this will directly affect her parents' property.
No, and mine.
Your property as well.
Both.
Oh, so both. So is that okay with the Assembly?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. And we still have enough of a vote to pass or not pass. So any discussion? And I'm in favor of this. I read through it, and there will be a assessment or appraisal done on the property, if I'm not mistaken, just for the public listening, and they will, the adjacent property owners to this right-of-way will pay for their half of, or their portion they receive, right? Member Walhooter.
Yeah, you know, and after looking at this map too, I will be voting for this. It looks like there's a home there that's kind of encroaching on this property, so instead of having to, you know, have to shift everything around, you know, it just seems more logical just to go ahead and divvy up that property and then put it on the tax rolls. So I'll be voting for this for that reason.
Okay, any other discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Planning and Zoning for their efforts on this and thoroughly vetting it. I'll definitely be voting for this today.
Okay, is there any other comments or discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes. Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, Resolution 2019-4 passes unanimously with a 5 vote, with Member Burrell abstaining. Okay, that brings us to item C under new business, and this is item 19-089, Baylor replacement request for proposals. I'll entertain a motion to authorize this RFP.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Lynn to allow the Public Works Director to release the request for proposal for the solid waste baler replacement. Any discussion on this RFP? Member Lynn?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a number of questions for Chris on this. Back under the scope of work, we talk about the baler will be a 2-ram horizontal Harris Badger, gives the number on it, conveyor will be a rubber belt type with drag chains. When we say that in the scope of the work, my understanding, I guess after our last conversation, is that we were going to open it up and look for alternative to what we had. And the reason I say that, then if you go down to the third paragraph in here, is it desirable to replace what we had, assume that's what we had, with the same thing. Am I missing something here? Or, and then I would go on to say that, back here you say something about if the proposal doesn't live up and we have to go back and modify the footprint we have or to do something else, as I see it, then we hold the contractor up because we'll have to redo our footprint. But if I was a contractor, I wouldn't bid, or if I was going to bid, I'd bid extremely high the way this is written. Am I missing something?
Chris, do you have an answer?
Well, there's a couple of different questions. The first question, as I understand, is you were asking about opening this up, to different things. That was, what we originally envisioned was looking at different options during the RFP process. Through the course of discussing the project and looking at this project over a number of months, it became apparent to us that, other technologies are just going to end up, costing us a lot more than trying to stick with what we currently do. So the RFP was geared towards really staying pretty close to our existing process to try and keep capital costs down, especially in light of the budget challenges that we're all facing right now. As far as the second part of your, what I believe is your second question, as to whether we worded things to cause somebody to put a high quote on this, I don't think so. The complete RFP wasn't in the packet. The language for the RFP is, the cost proposal description is. We have a number of pictures we're including with the RFP. There's a floor plan. There's a lot of detail, and in addition, we're having them put in a couple, visits so that they can look over the site as part of their proposal. We really structured this to try and avoid any surprises on our part or on the contractor's part. And so, basically that's it. We did kind of narrow down on the process we want to have for our solid waste disposal in the future, and I think there's lots of detail in there to give proposers an adequate idea of what needs to happen, what we're willing to do as far as making changes to the plant, and kind of laying it on them if they want to propose something that falls outside the scope of the language in the RFP, that it's the risk for that is on them. But if they stay, if they propose something that stays within, the recommendations that we have in the RFP, then I don't see any higher level of risk there, I guess.
If I can follow up on that. The piece of equipment that you're asking for here, is that the same or like we currently have, or in your research, is that the one that you came up with that would seem to do the best job for us in the long term?
Yes, it's substantially similar to what we have now. In my discussions with various vendors, with my staff, we came up with a few things that we wanted to do differently. One thing that we thought would cut some cost from the proposal is to shorten up that conveyor. Really doesn't need to be as lengthy as it is now. But yeah, we also felt like we didn't need to make the machine any bigger or have any more capacity than our current machine. That machine has served very well for a really long time, and we didn't feel like going big, so to speak, would be a benefit. So we're trying to stay smaller scale, and also, one, I guess, not significant cost factor, but not insignificant either, is we wanted to be able to reuse the existing wire tie machine that we have. We replaced that a couple months ago, and so we wanted to be able to reuse that piece of equipment. And so that kind of played into the specs that we came up with.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess as an assembly, we'll have, when we get the RFPs, we'll be able to look over and approve or disapprove what we see coming our way. But, Chris, I have a question for you about the volume, and another question about, now I don't know if we're tied to making the new baler fit the wire tie machine that we just purchased, but it would definitely make things cheaper. I can't remember what the purchase of the wire tie part was, but so the baler we have now, or the size of baler you're proposing in this RFP, will that leave room for growth in the, expansion? Can we put more garbage through what we have now, or what we, without it being hindered? If Petersburg grows for some reason, or if our garbage influx grows?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, I didn't want to limit, if we're going to rebuild something, I'd hate to limit our capacity. Any other discussion on letting this RFP be sent out? RFP, okay. Clerk, call the roll.
Randy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes. Okay, we'll see how the results come back. Next item on the agenda is power generation diesel surcharge. We didn't vote to amend the agenda, but I don't know if at this point if we need to have this discussion after SEPA has already decided to pay for our diesel use. So we could just, if it's okay with the assembly, we'll just pass over that. And the next item is under new business is E, and that's mayor traveled to Juneau during the legislative session. I'd entertain a motion to approve possibly 2 more trips to Juneau for probably a 1-day visit with Alaska Conference of Mayors and Alaska Municipal League to lobby legislators or the governor about his fiscal year 2020 budget, and let's talk about the effects to our community. So entertain a motion for approval. So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Walden, seconded by Member Borough. Discussion? Just to clarify for the people listening, this was talked about at Alaska Municipal League a week or so ago, and the town hall meetings that we're having and that they're having all over the state that have already taken place. We were going to gather information from our communities and go back and, as a unified front underneath the Conference of Mayors, explain the effects to our community. And it's hard to, at this point, know what the effects are. The legislature, I don't think, has even, made any motions or changed to try to change the proposed budget of the governor. So it seemed like it was at least good to have the ability to travel if necessary. Member Lynn?
Yeah. Thank you. I agree with you, this is a kind of an unusual year, but I would like to propose an amendment to this, that I would change it to allow for not only yourself, but the manager, if need be, to go with it. So I would amend the motion that's on the table to allow for, let's say, up to 4, yourself and/or the manager, if need be, if it makes a difference, to continue.
It's better to have that availability, I agree.
I'll second that. That was a motion, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah, it was a motion.
If I just...
Sure.
Rather than making it specific to me or staff, because it may come up that it's best to send Jody, depending on the issue, or Glow. Leaving that up to the assembly, but rather if you make it specific to me, and then we find out that, the issue we're going to be fighting about is raw fish tax in the harbor grant program, you might want to be sending Glow there instead of me.
Okay. Member Lynn, would you be willing to reword your amendment to the motion to send the mayor and one other?
The mayor and one other, yes.
The borough employee? Yes,
or assembly member, however's decided that best meets our own borough here.
I'll second that.
Okay, you willing to second that motion still, or the amendment, Mr.
Whatever.
Grigg, or?
Someone's-
Morrell? Somebody, go ahead. Okay, so now we're voting on the amendment to add one person, so it'll be two people, myself and possibly the manager or harbor master or finance director, whatever the situation requires. Okay, will the clerk call the roll on the amendment?
Taylor,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. Okay, we just voted on the amendment, so now we'll vote on the motion as amended, but it's probably going to come out with the same result. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I do one quick clarification here? Just for the listening public, could you give us an estimate on what you think the cost would be on these trips, just so that the people out there don't think that we're just not concerned about what it's going to cost to send somebody up there? Because I'll tell you right now, a person that is in, shows up in person has a lot more clout than palms or telephone calls and things like that. So I'm a huge advocate of standing before them and then having them tell us that they can or can't do something, So I think this is very, very important. But I think the public needs to kind of have some idea what we're talking about here in expenses.
I would think it would be probably with the hotel room and travel, and if you needed to rent a car, it's going to be, for one day, it's probably going to be $600 per person. So if it was a 2-day endeavor, it'd be $2,500 maybe per trip.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
That's just back of a napkin. So,
Well, and I think we could use miles too, so it would probably be half that if we can use airline miles.
okay, so anyway, thanks for interjecting that. Member Walhooder, clerk, call the roll.
Taylor,
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Mark.
Yes, yeah, that travel authorization passes unanimously. Now we have, under new business, item F, an impact statement in response to Governor Dunleavy's proposed fiscal year 2020 budget. I'd entertain a motion to approve this letter.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Walhooder, seconded by Member Morrell. Any comments, or any assembly members want to change any of the wording, or do you want to just approve it like it is?
The only thing I think we talked about was that PMC's statement today isn't listed in this letter, so I'm not sure if you guys would like me to add that or before, or approve it with that addition, or if you guys would like to see it again prior.
I don't see why there would be a problem changing to add Mr. Hofstadter's statement. Is that what you're asking? The more information we have with the effects on our community that are documented, and like as documented as they can be with the information we know with this moving target, to add to this, I don't see a problem with it. Any other discussion or changes? Member Morrell, do you?
I was going to say, I see that there was something listed about the Medicaid in our hospital, but is there something about the huge school cuts? Which will
Schools including
affect-
early development.
Well, there was the bond, oh, the one, okay, never mind. Never mind, I saw the bond, the bonds, I lost, okay, never mind.
Through the mayor, just a general statement, we're going to make one more pass through on the section that says summary of direct Petersburg impacts. We're going to make sure all those numbers are accurate with what we're getting back from school and equal something that Jody's been working on with AML, which also includes all that same information. So prior to having you sign it, we want to sync all those numbers up so we're all on the same page. And then we would, if the assembly approves, it would get everybody's signature. That makes sense.
Did we plan on incorporating, or is it going to be a separate document, the letter from our town hall meeting, or the information we got from our
We're
town hall?
going to do that totally separate.
Just so the public knows, I was assuming that was the case. Member Walhooder.
Yeah, this is a question for Steve. So Steve, here on reduction in Medicaid and health spending, 8% cut, is that a misprint, or is that?
That was a number that we had early on in the process, and we're going to use language that Phil has given us since then.
Yeah, 38, I thought.
Talks about the impacts of the 38% cut.
Okay.
That's why I said we have some. This was written several days ago to get it into the packet and stuff. We're going to sync all that section that talks about summary of direct Petersburg impacts. All those numbers are going to be double-checked back. We've got to change the numbers for the hospital. We're also waiting for some information from the school to make sure that that 1.4 million is correct. And then we'll make sure that it equals the stuff we're giving back to AML, which is going to be passed around as well.
Okay, perfect. And I just want to reiterate, like we said, when the governor's budget, proposed budget first came out, that this is a moving target and it has to go through the legislature and the veto and the overrides and everything else. So it's a moving target. We'll see how it moves forward, but this is a start. So if there's no other discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, we will modify it as needed and get that sent off to the proper entities. Now, I recommend the appointment of Gina Esposito to the vacant library board seat until the October 2019 municipal election. I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
Second.
The motion been made by Member Burrell, second by Member Stanton Greger. Any discussion? Member Stanton Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Gina Esposito for volunteering to serve on the library board. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for your willing to participate. If there's no other discussion, will the clerk call the roll?
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, assembly discussion items. Is there any recognitions today by staff or assembly members? Member Norheim.
Just real quick, I'd like to thank everybody who vaccinated their kids. That's about it.
Thank you. If there's no other recognitions, we'll move on to item B under assembly discussion items. And it's about the Borough Performance Incentive Program that Manager Giesbrick is requesting discussion regarding his Borough Performance Incentive Program suggestion. If there's interest among the Assembly to implement the program, the subject could be added to a future agenda as an action item. So this is a discussion item, so any thoughts? By the Assembly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Member Morrell?
I think it's a good idea. I don't see how it can hurt anything, and it will just give the people or the employees a voice, and oftentimes they see stuff that we don't, our managers don't, and I don't see any harm in it.
Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah. In a future role, I had a program like this in place, and very similar to what Steve's proposing, and it worked very well. There wasn't all that money given out, but what was given out was significant changes that they recommended and took place. It made a big difference, and so I'm quite in favor of doing a program similar to this.
Any other discussion? Member Walhuter?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I like this idea too, because this kind of gives the employees for the city, a bit of ownership in how things are operated. So I think this is a great idea. Any kind of incentive at all that helps them feel as though they're a part of this process, I think it's great.
Any other comments? One thought I had, and a little bit of confusion, which is easy for me to be confused, but under item 3, it says payout is 5% of net savings or the net revenue achieved over a one-year period, $250 or $5,000, whichever is less. I mean, $250 would always be less, wouldn't it?
Depends on
or if it's a percentage thing, so you tie the 5% with the...
Right. Depends on what savings. I mean, I wanted to encourage people to even small things make a difference. So, 5% of, $100 isn't very much, but hey, if it saves us $100 and it's a decent idea that we can implement and the group says, then we'll go for it. So we can clearly make that whatever the Assembly wants it to be, but I was trying to say, okay, here's some, parameters around it. I wanted a maximum on it because that can get scary, but God, we hope somebody comes up with an idea that saves us $5,000, so,
Okay, yeah, I see that they have a program similar to this in the federal government, but it's millions of dollars, but it's not disclosed. So hopefully if there is anything, it's all above board disclosed, and if the borough moves forward with this. Another question I had was just how much time can you foresee being involved with the evaluation committee, which is proposed to be a department head of the department where the idea comes from, the manager, and the finance director? Do you think it's going to be very time consuming or first?
It's going to sound horrible. I hope so. Clearly, if no one gives us any ideas, there's no time at all. And if we get 150 ideas from the employees, we'll have our hands full. So, I've had this kind of a program in the private sector before. Generally, it starts off with a huge mad rush of people with ideas, and then kind of trickles off. But I don't know that. Yeah, that's an open-ended thing there, is we may find that we have to cut down on number of staff members involved in this to make it, one less meeting to go to. But especially up front, I wanted the employees to feel that we're taking this seriously. I wanted, I would really appreciate the assembly being involved in it, to see the ideas as they come forward. And, I think it's time well spent in some ways, because we'd probably likely, after the review, we'd ask the employee to come in and sit in front of the group and explain their idea, and that's good too. So.
Okay, so if there's Member Walter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one last comment on that is kind of like what Brandy was saying. I mean, this is like due diligence to make sure that everybody's on board with trying to save as much money as we can possibly save, no matter what the wacky idea is. If it's going to save the community, a tremendous amount of money, well, then a little incentive program, I think, is okay with me. So, yep.
Okay, well, any other discussion items Bruce wants to add, or is this one, have we discussed this one enough, you think? Okay, well, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I even delayed it a little bit to give you the chance.
Yeah, well,
I could get some more, or I